Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is the first day of racing at Tour of Romandie. It's not stage one because today is a prologue at just under 7 kilometers long, pancake flat. They're going to follow along the canal, I'm going to call it, there on the right side of the road. Right after they leave the ramp, they'll follow along that. The last turn will take about 25 seconds, just under maybe 24, 23 if you want a winning time out of the last left turn into the finish line. You got to get to that last turn there at about 7 minutes, 7:01, 7:02, and you're probably out of any chance of winning here at today's individual prologue time trial at Tour of Romandie. Now, when the racing starts and the cameras come on, it's Ivo Oliveira from UAE Team Emirates who's in the hot seat. It's not going to take too much time, though, before we see Nico Dens, Bora Hansgrohe come flying up the final straightaway. And then all of a sudden, we see Nico Dens, his head drops down to look between his armpit and his legs there. He's looking at his gears, and he realizes that the chain has come off. We see in the cameras the chain is flipping around. Nico Dens adjusts from out of the aero position into his drops, gets the shifting back under control just before the finish line with a couple hard pedal strokes on the pedals there to come across the line with the fastest time at this moment of the prologue here at Tour of Romandie. Now, he was about 4 seconds faster than Ivo Oliveira from UAE Team Emirates, but this looks like a pretty solid time early here in the prologue. Now, coming up next is Eddie Dunbar from Jayco Alula. This was a little bit of an interesting talk here between Nico Roche and the commentator here at GCN as they were talking about Eddie Dunbar having a leadership role at the Giro d'Italia. Now, he had won last year 2 of the smaller stage races, Coppa e Bartoli and Tour of Hungary. And so now switching teams from Ineos going over to Jayco Alula, they're going to put him into the hot seat at the Giro d'Italia is what the commentators are talking about. Now, Nico Roche, one of the commentators, is Irish, and Eddie Dunbar is Irish too. Now, I was a bit surprised to hear that they would make him the race leader at the Giro. Wasn't certain if they're talking about making him a protected rider or the race leader, which is a big time difference. If you're race leader at the Giro d'Italia, I'm thinking that you're going for the individual classification. But if you're one of the protected riders, I'm thinking of it more as they're going to have him going for stages, possibly get him somewhere up at the top 10, but not necessarily focusing with Eddie Dunbar to win the Giro d'Italia. But it sounded like from the commentary here with Nico Roche, and he's Irish, like I said, and then of course we see Eddie Dunbar is Irish. Those two have been training together, so he's got some inside stories here, and he says that he is the race leader for the Giro d'Italia. Now, Eddie Dunbar is going through the corners a little bit soft, taking a little bit of precaution, and then all of a sudden we're going to see Eddie Dunbar. He's got his head down as he's coming straight into a little zigzag in the road. He's just about getting ready to go left off the road, and all of a sudden he lifts his TT helmet up, realizes so, does a hard turn to the right and avoids crashing just 2 weeks before the Giro d'Italia starts here in the prologue stage of Tour of Romandie. Eddie Dunbar will come through that last corner as he gets out of the pedal, starts accelerating. He'll cross the line, but not for a winning time. At the end of the day, he's going to be about 20 seconds down on the general classification winner here after today's stage prologue. Now, coming up next, all of a sudden we see it's Rui Costa, my old teammate from Lamprey. He's up on the ramp getting ready to start. Then as he gets ready to take off, the cameras go to a little more picturesque view there of Tour of Romandie. Then when they come back, we see it's Rui Costa. He's throwing his right leg over the bike as he's coming off. It's just at the bottom of the ramp. Don't know what happened at the moment, but doesn't take very long to figure out that the mechanic looks like he forgot to tighten a couple bolts on the chainring because you see the chainring dangling off. Now we go back to a replay of the ramp and you see Rui Costa gets ready to accelerate, and then of course the chainring's breaking off and his left knee is going into the handlebar. Later when the mechanic comes running over, you see Rui Costa grabbing his knee there in some pain, and he'll jump on his normal road bike and finish off the prologue just under 5 minutes down on today's stage. So that'll be it for the general classification for the Intermarché Rui Costa's chances here at Romandie. Next up, we're going to see in the warm-up area, it's Egan Bernal warming up, the Team Ineos rider. This is the Tour de France winner from 2019 and Giro d'Italia winner also. He has had some bad luck starting last year when he had that accident going into the back of the bus while training in Colombia with multiple broken bones. He recovered near the end of the season, started a little bit of racing, then at the beginning of this season has had a couple crashes that have hurt his knees. But we did see Egan Bernal finish over at the Basque Country a few weeks back, and now he's here at the prologue of Tour of Romandie. Egan Bernal will cross the line about 26 seconds down on the general classification when it's all said and done after today's stage. While Egan Bernal was warming up, pseudo-quick-steps Joseph Cherney's coming down the final straightaway to throw his bike at the line and take the hot seat here 4 seconds faster than Nico Dins. 5 seconds when it's all said and done at the end of the day. But when you see the rider Joseph Cherney from Pseudo Quickstep going full gas into the finish and tossing his bike, you know he's got a quick time. Now, there's still some other quality riders to come with Tobias Foss, still the individual road TT champion in his rainbow brand jersey, looking fabulous up there at the start ramp. He's going to be one of the last of the favorites to go because just before him is going to be another Pseudo Quickstep rider, Remy Cavagna. We know the Frenchman always puts on a display when we're talking about battling against the individual clock and the TTs. And so Remy Cavagna is flying out of the last corner. He's at a time of 7 minutes and 1 second. When the camera shows him at 50 meters to go, he's got 3 seconds. But is it 50 meters? Is it 51 meters? Is it 49 meters? It's going to be important to know because at minus 3 seconds, he's still got a shot at winning today's stage. But with the bike throw at the line, he's going to come up 0.97 seconds slower than his teammate Joseph Cherney. Now, Tobias Foss is still out there on the road, and as when he leaves the ramp, you know he's going to put in a display because he's got the Rainbow Band TT Champion jersey on his back. As he's flying out of the last corner here at the prologue stage, same thing, time of 7 minutes and 1 second. It means it's going to be a tight battle. We see right away Tobias Foss is accelerating hard on the pedals, and then we come into 50 meters to go. It's minus 3 seconds, but is it 51 meters? Is it 49 meters? I don't know, but we'll know by the time he throws his bike at the line. Once he does, we realize that he's coming in second on the stage by under 0.3 of a second to Joseph Cherney. So when the stage is all done, Joseph Cherney will win the stage by under 0.3 of a second from Tobias Foss, and then just under a second at 0.97 seconds there of a second from his teammate, talking about Remy Cavagna. Behind and fourth, Nico Dins, Bora Hansgrohe rounded out the fourth, and then fifth, we're talking about Joel Sutter from Two Door Cycling. Fantastic right here to get Two Door Cycling a top 5 in today's individual prologue stage here at Tour of Romandie. Now, we start needing to dissect some of the GC favorites, right? Okay, in my book, it's Juan Ayuso, the UAE Team Emirates rider, at 12 seconds back on the general classification. That looks to be top of the GC favorites. We go a little bit further back to 19 seconds. There's Adam Yates there, and then 1 second behind him is his brother Simon Yates. It's rare that we get the pleasure of watching both Adam and Simon racing at the same event together, and now that they're on different teams, we know they're going to have to battle, so the GC battle should be really cool to watch. Adam Yates along with Simon Yates battling it out to see who can win. Now, we look a little bit further back at 26 seconds. Like I told you, Egan Bernal is back there for Team Ineos. This looks pretty solid when you really dissect it. It's less than 15 seconds back of Ayuso's time. 26 seconds after 7-kilometer prologue looks a little bit like a lot of lost of time, but when you compare him to Ayuso's time at under 15 seconds back from Ayuso, you got to believe Egan Bernal's in a solid spot. Why do I point him out? Well, like I said, he's a 2019 Tour de France champion and he's a Giro d'Italia champion. This is his first race and coming back. It looks like where he might have some form after today's individual prologue stage here at Tour of Romandie. So keep an eye on Egan Bernal, because if Egan Bernal can return to his old self, then all of a sudden we got a threat, another rider threat to win the Tour de France here in July. Now, a lot of times you guys ask me when I'm talking about Mathieu van der Poel why I don't ever put him in the top 5. Well, I don't believe he's the top 5 best rider in the world. I believe he's about 6. But here's the problem I have with putting him 6, Egan Bernal, right? Now, if you go back 2 seasons and you look at Egan Bernal after winning the Giro d'Italia and winning the Tour de France in 2019, Would you take Matthew van der Poel over Egan Bernal? I'm not so certain. That's the problem I have with riders like Matthew van der Poel when you're talking about 6th through 10th, is you have Egan Bernal, who's a 2-time Grand Tour winner, and has won multiple stuff throughout his career. People have started to forget about him because it's been a year and a half, coming on 2 years since we've seen big-time results from Egan Bernal, but there's solid reasons for those results not to be there on his resume during this last year and a half season. And this is the first race coming back. We're at 26 seconds back, under 15 from Ayuso. I'm starting to think Egan Bernal is starting to look a little bit more like himself. Now, will he have winning form? I can't tell you that, but July is still further enough away where if we see some solid riding out of Egan Bernal during this week's Tour of Romandie, you know he can be ready for the Tour de France starting 2023 on the 1st of July. Keep an eye out this week of racing. Going to be important to see what happens to Egan Bernal. Now, behind him was Eddie Dunbar, and like I said, normally I wouldn't have thought of Eddie Dunbar as being a Grand Tour GC rider, but we hear the little inside story there from Roche talking about how now Jaco Lula are going to make him the GC rider. And I was always curious when he rode for Team Ineos because you would see some solid climbing out of Eddie Dunbar from time to time, but then you would see the Irish kid also back off. Now, I believe he's about 26 years of age, so he's not very old, and it might still be a little bit too soon to make him a GC favorite when you're talking about a big Pro Tour team going into the Giro d'Italia. But would I expect him to win stages, be able to ride in the top 15 of the Giro d'Italia? Absolutely. So keep an eye on Eddie Dunbar throughout this week's of racing of Tour of Romandie too. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Tomorrow's stage at 170 kilometers, one big climb in the middle of the stage could possibly have some kind of effect if you're talking about getting rid of some of the pure sprinters back there. If you want to get rid of Mark Cavendish, might be a good way to do it. If we're talking about a Peter Sagan type riding where they drill it in the middle of the stage, get rid of the pure sprinters and have the non-pure sprinters up there with a shot at winning. But I think with Soudal Quickstep, they're going to want to control everything throughout tomorrow's stage because they have the race leader's yellow jersey here at Tour of Romandie with Joseph Cherney's win. And they also have a pure sprinter on their team with Ethan Vernon. So they should be happy to come into tomorrow's stage, regardless if they have Mark Cavendish there or not. Be exciting to see if one of the other teams like Team Ineos decide to drill it though up that climb in the middle of tomorrow's stage and see if they can't get rid of a Mark Cavendish so that they give Ethan Hayter a better shot at winning tomorrow's stage 1 of Tour of Romandie. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition real soon.